Aloha, and this is The Art of Life. I'm your host, Willow Chang Leon, and we do broadcast from the heart of downtown here in Pioneer Plaza. You can check us out on the internet on ThinkTech Hawaii, as well as YouTube, and all of our episodes are archived on our Art of Life page on Facebook. Today is our episode, which is basically part 2 of 2 profiling artists that are involved in the 2015 Oahu Fringe Festival. So, without further ado, to use that tired cliche, let me tell you who we have sitting at the table. We have, I want to make sure I have it, say it right, Rebecca Lea.
Rebecca Lea.
Rebecca Lea MacCarthy. The A threw me off and I was thinking Princess Leia. And your wonderful director.
Yes, Dale Westgaard.
Yes. Welcome so much
Thank you.
Coming and sharing with us what you'll be presenting in a real short period of time, in about 2 weeks, a little under 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Fantastic. So tell us about this magical book that you have written and the play that has come from it. We'd love to know all about it.
Well, the book is called Writing the Diaphragm Blues, and it's kind of a book, it's memoir, but also it looks specifically at the experience of women from that point in time where you look at your mom and you go, Mom, where do babies come from? All the way up through menopause. And it takes a very humorous look at that journey, but also a serious look and all the complicated things that happen in between those moments. Because I think for everybody too, this goes for men too, but I can only speak from the female point of view. Female sexuality is weird and difficult.
Her word choice, not mine.
Men's sexuality is not, of course.
Oh, no, that's very straightforward, right? No. I think, well, for all of us, we're brought up with lots of mythology and...
the stork?
The stork. For me, it was pumpkin seeds. I was told that babies came from pumpkin seeds. I actually heard somebody the other day quite literally talking about it, talking about how she told her daughter that babies were born from seeds because she wasn't really sure how to present the idea. So
I was told the same thing. And every fruit that had a seed, when I was about 6 years old, I was paranoid that if I swallowed the seed, I would magically have a baby.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I came home and it was quite literally was Halloween, and my mom was baking pumpkin seeds, and I had a hysteric fit. I was just so upset, and she had to explain to me the truth. So
heaven forbid the truth.
I know,
right?
And she brought me this wonderful book with beautiful pictures about where babies came from, and I took it to show and tell, and my mom got lots of phone calls.
Yeah. You are the most popular girl in class.
I was. I set my peers straight. But so that actually is stories in here, and it looks at all the weirdness. I mean, because we get so many of these myths and oddities from childhood all the way to adulthood, all the way to menopause, where we're not told what to expect. We get a lot of jokes about how hot we're going to all be.
Right.
I think Burger King has this very famous commercial where they give menopausal women cold drinks, and that's like, the joke, right?
Oh.
So I really wanted to, it became a theme in my life very, very early on, these weird kind of experiences with sexuality and how I dealt with it. And how my friends dealt with it, because none of us, we would always feel uncomfortable even talking about it, So the book kind of came from that, from a very early age, and it chronicles those iconic moments in women's life. Everything from the humorous to, the pumpkin seed story and me thinking my mom was doing something horrible to potential babies, to when I was raped and sexually molested, and how I had to deal with that, and how society dealt with that, to understanding birth control and how that functions, and talking to partners, to menopause. So it goes the whole arc.
And I could easily say that they're timely matters, but they're timely only in a sense because they'll never go away. But it seems like only now in 2015, and it's a brand new year, a lot of these topics are getting their due, and they're actually being discussed sometimes for the first nationwide conversation. And I mean, yes, we're going to go there. The whole Bill Cosby thing. I mean, when I hear people say, oh, well, why didn't these women say anything? They don't even realize that the term date rape wasn't even coined. It wasn't a concept. And the power structure, not only between the genders of men and women, but also when you have fame or clout or money or all those other factors, there's a lot of things that go hand in hand. And Roe v. Wade is possibly going to rear its head again, or whether the Supreme Court was going to decide if businesses had the option to opt out of covering for birth control. I mean, it's amazing that as advanced as we think that we are, so many of these things have not really had their due. They haven't been discussed, just to know the basic functions of the body or what the process is. So good for you that you wrote this book. I'm hoping that it will open some minds and hearts.
I hope so. It seems to bring conversation.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Yep.
People like to talk. And as I say in the book, this all goes back to a 1873 law called the Comstock Law, in which it outlawed any discussion about female sexuality over the male. And it gave all this power to this one man, Comstock, who could quite literally go through the mail and open your mail and read it and decide whether or not it was obscene.
It's like the early NSA.
Yes. And then the law was, though, later on picked up with the Telecommunications Act in 1996. So when it comes to female sexuality, all the points you brought up, we have this long history where women have been taught silence, and we don't even realize that it's ingrained in part of our history in general.
It's true. I remember in high school we had to read Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter. And I remember as a teenager thinking, well, that's kind of strange, because you have two consenting adults that are having an affair, but she's the one who ends up having to wear the letter and be shamed in society. Or whenever you have sumptuary laws, isn't that a great word? Use that on your ACT test. Rules that are concerning what you can or can't wear, or rules of division based on gender. It's often the women who bear the brunt of having to remain covered up. And that's not exclusively one religion over another. No. That's almost consistent in all religions, or even something as simple as, we were talking about hair before the show started, but in a lot of cultures, a way to shame a woman is to cut her hair off.
Cut her hair,
yes.
yeah. One of the books I've written is about the Magdalen laundries. And one of the first things that happened to the women who were placed in the laundries, which were, for those who may not know it, these institutions that were global, where women who were marginalized in society, so single mothers, people who might have been in prostitution, sometimes women who were far too pretty, and they thought that she would, the girl would actually fall from grace because she was endowed with this beauty. The first thing that they would do would be shave her hair to take away the vanity, the beauty.
Interesting. Kind of like in Les Miserables, those women working in the laundry, if I recall. Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of sad.
It is kind of sad. We're going to take a moment to think about that. Think if we've made any progress at all, and we'll be right back with The Art of Life.
Aloha, I'm Kili'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
It's The Art of Life, where we always hope that you learn something new and fascinating via our guests and the discussions that we have here. And today we have no shortage of interesting and fascinating and educational things with our guests, Rebecca and Dale, who shall be in conjunction presenting at the Oahu Fringe Festival this upcoming 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Yeah, 13th and it's going to be at 7. Sorry, I'm actually looking at my notes here. Sorry, the February 12th and 14th will be at 6 p.m. and the 13th will be at 7:30 at Ong King Arts Center. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you folks have 3 shows on all days of the festival itself.
Yes.
Super, super. So I want to cut away to this fantastic cover, which you might see there. The book is entitled, as is the play, Writing the Diaphragm Blues, and in the small font, and other sexual cacophonies. Think about that. I mean, woo, we like it. So tell us, how did this book then become a play? At what point did you decide and say, you know what, this needs to be a show? Or did you always know that it was going to be a show?
Well, it actually started out as a show.
Okay.
And it became a book. The show, I worked, when I was going to Rollins College in Florida, I worked with Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
And we wanted to create a venue in which we could advertise, or I don't know if advertise is really a good word, educate our audiences on many, many different levels of sexuality and the process women and people in general just face. And so we thought this would be a great way to do it. And I was working with them. I had a fellowship to work with them. And so the show started there, and then throughout the years it's built, and then eventually I got to write the book, and then Dale was kind enough to say, yeah, that he would work with me.
And I want to know how you guys met. Was it like a cute meet that, you know,
Yes.
like, that's a term they use in film. That's your homework. Look it up, a cute meet.
I was directing Arsenic and Old Lace.
Okay.
Rebecca came to the audition, and I met her then and cast her as one of the crazy aunts. And
Not typecasting.
No,
never.
When I spoke with her on the phone, the image that I had of her, and still have to this day, is a kind of Mamie Eisenhower-like character.
Okay.
With a blue dress and white accents and white gloves and a hat, none of which she owns or has, and I don't know where this image came from, but it continued on and got a little crack in it one day when she told me she had tattoos. And I went, oh, okay. And then she said she was a member of the roller derby team, and I went, oh. And then she handed me this book and says, here, you'll find out everything you want to know about me. And I looked at it somewhere, either on the back page or the back cover. It says feminism. Oh, no. I didn't want to read that at all. Sorry.
The dirty F word.
It is, right?
The other dirty F word. And so I...
Along with fun.
Yes.
Fun feminists.
Yeah.
That's never heard.
So anyway, it became closer and closer to the end of the run of Arsenic, and I thought, no, she and I become really good friends. I guess I can go ahead and read this book, even though I know I'm not going to understand it. But I have to do that just because she gave it to me. So I did, and found it amazing and delightful, intelligent. I learned something. I learned a whole lot of stuff. I still didn't know what a diaphragm was, but I was close.
We all have one.
Not that one.
Oh, no.
That's where you get your breath from. Actually, the moon on the book is a diaphragm.
See, and I thought it was a moon.
It looks
I
like a
feel
moon.
like such an innocent.
No, it's a happy diaphragm.
Fantastic. You know, how rare it is to have a working friendship and a friendship and someone who can present you a book and literally say, I'm an open book. You know, I think I think prior to blogging, where people do, so the personal content that people are willing to pour out onto the page and take a leap of faith that someone is going to want to read it, let alone feel some kind of sense of trust that it's going to be in good hands. It's a courageous thing to do. It's courageous to write it. It's courageous to read it. Because I think a lot of times people put up their own filters and, like they say, knee-jerk response, like, I'm not a feminist. I don't even have the plumbing. I don't relate to that. That's not my bag. So good for both of you. So at what point did you realize that it just had to be presented?
Well, working with him in Arsenic and Old Right Lace, and we had become friends, I just knew he was the one I wanted to direct it, because we worked really well creatively together, I thought. And
you're still here, and
I was
dead,
nervous.
so.
Yeah, I was nervous of giving it to him. I figured he'd say no, but he immediately said yes, and I was like, oh wow, cool, okay.
Yeah.
So, and then the more we talked about it, although it's a feminist piece, it's also kind of universal. I mean, it's not threatening to men. It's not about bashing men. It's not about trying to raise one gender above the other, because I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
And it disturbs me when I see feminism presented that way. It's quite literally about, hey, I want to open my doors to invite other people to talk, and men and women, and relate better with each other about these topics,
Right.
so that we can just, so we can all get along.
Can't we all just get along?
Yeah, seriously.
This is one of the greatest things said in the 20th century.
Right.
You know, I think you brought up a point that's really important, because I'm going to just cite this lightning rod as part of the dynamic. When Rush Limbaugh spent a great deal of his career coining that term feminazis and using it repeatedly on air and through the media to kind of diminish and to bash the feminist movement, which encapsulates many different ideologies, I think what it did is it just made everybody fearful, and it created what would I say? It created a situation of fear, or which then, when you're afraid, you don't want to speak up. You cease to have dialogue. You cease to have heart conversations. You cease to see one another and understand each other, because you can't even talk about these things. And I think what you said was really important. Is it's not about trumping. It's not about asserting that one takes precedence or is more important or has contributed more or should be at the front of the line. It's to create that dialogue, to understand our differences, maybe our similarities, to create harmony. I would say appreciation goes into that.
Yeah.
And I'd also say autonomy for all individuals, because I think once you create a sense of balance and equality for both sexes and genders, which are very different things, then we can have these discussions about equal pay and ownership of the body, where the individual can decide what's right for them. And I think that everybody, whether you're male or female or whatever, that's something that's so essential. To me, that strikes me as a human right, to be able to say whether it is you want to get a tattoo or a nose ring, or what type of birth control you want to use, or if you want to use birth control. I think the beauty in that discussion and that idea is that every person can be autonomous and decide for themselves what's appropriate.
Yes, absolutely. And I finished writing this at the height of the feminazi
Oh my goodness.
dialogue. I think one of my chapters actually talks specifically about that. And one of the things when I was writing this book, and also the play, that was important to me is I wanted to confront that anger, not only from Rush, but the anger that we were seeing on social media, gamers, and a lot of the female gamers that were coming out and saying, listen, a lot of the gaming issues right now is that you're creating these female characters that are not only stereotypes, they're not real stereotypes, and women feel uncomfortable playing these roles, and there was a lot of backlash there too. Tremendous. And I wanted to confront a lot of that actually with good humor as well, because I think sometimes when we get on our soapbox, like Rush did, he was definitely on a soapbox about the feminazi, we lose the humanity behind the reality of the difficulty in it that exists talking between genders, between our assumptions of how sexuality should be, our assumptions about how a man and woman should relate, no matter who they are, right? And where they come from. And I really wanted to confront that with a smile. rather than anger, because I think when we go into feminism, we start talking about these issues, there is a tendency to get frustrated, to get really angry, and I don't want that, because I don't think that actually moves the cause forward.
Yeah, it puts a lot of defenses up. I mean, it's the same thing in the 80s when there was ACT UP with Larry Kramer, which it was a very effective means to have these die-ins and to have, you know, great, before social media, to have people collectively work together and express an anger for the lack of efforts made on behalf to combat AIDS. But then people reach a saturation point because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to sustain anger. So if you can maybe kill them with kindness or education or with laughter, which are essential things and ultimately positive things where you can then move that conversation forward, well, you actually have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was ACT UP, actually. They had this great protest. It was brilliant because they were there was issues with moving in with rentals and renting to people with AIDS, and so a whole bunch of people from ACT UP took in middle of busy intersection, and they set up a living room. They just set up the living room, and for a whole weekend, they watched TV in the living room. They had popcorn. They made, you know, and they just and they didn't really necessarily interact with the people who were staring at them. They just lived. They just lived, and they lived in their living room, set up in this middle of this intersection, and they got more attention from that one moment, and it was hilarious. It was very, very funny. I mean, partly because they committed to the fact that this is our living room, right? And they lived as if they were living in the living room. And it was really quite beautiful, but from that moment of laughter, from that moment of absurdity, they were able to really push the envelope of a lot of people in New York who would not rent to people with AIDS. It was huge, and they were able to accomplish that. So, yes, I think sometimes those funnier moments, those ironic moments, brings a larger audience in and welcomes maybe change.
That's true, and it also invites the humanity. You know, for us to remember our human moments, right?
Yeah.
I'm reminded of a book that I never read, but I'm aware it exists. It's called Everybody Poops. A parent wrote it for their child. I can't even imagine what the purpose is, but for some reason I want to think that it's just to say it's the great equalizer, but I don't know.
Well, it's like getting up in front of a group of people and you just say, well, they're all naked. And it theoretically makes you more relaxed speaking to that group of people.
Unless you don't want to see them naked. Now think about that. We have a little break, and when we come back, we promise we will all have our clothes still on. This is The Art of Life.
Okay, this is ThinkTech Hawaii, and it's Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Energy Wednesday here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Come and listen to us. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to ask Sharon to tell us more.
Come and see us every Wednesday, as Jay said. And we have people like Jim Albers from HECO here and co-host Ray Starling here every Wednesday. We not only go on Olelo and OC16, but also stream live. So please come visit us, hear about the latest in clean energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here. You got any comment on all this?
As important as energy is in all of our lives today, this is a great forum and a great format to vet those issues. So I encourage everybody to listen in and participate.
Okay, Ray, what do you think for a close?
Well, I think this is the greatest show in the energy world here in Hawaii. You can come here every week, 1 hour, and catch the latest on what's happening and hear from the people who really know what's going on, like Jim Alberts. We appreciate your coming today.
Thank you.
Ray Starling, Sharon Moriwaki, Jim Alberts, and Jay Fidel here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy.
Aloha.
4 to 5 p.m. Wednesday. Aloha.
It's pronounced Lee instead of Leah.
We're back on. Don't you wish that you could hear what was off camera? We might have to make a show where that's allowed. We are here representing the Art of Life, and we have some artists who are featuring in the Oahu Fringe Festival that's upcoming the second weekend of February. So not this weekend, but the following weekend. And welcome to Rebecca and Dale, who are presenting this wonderful show called Singing. The Diaphragm Blues. The book is Writing the Diaphragm Blues. And this is an event that's going to be on King. One-woman show?
One-woman show.
I'm curious about your creative process. Like, Dale, at what point do you jump in? Or do you give prompts and directives, or you see where she wants to go with it and then you just give feedback? Or what's the interaction?
It's probably that I have a vision, but I always think that theater should be collaborative.
Okay.
So I'm willing to let the actor, the artist, share his or her vision with me first, rather than try to impose something on it. And so we read the script, we talked about it, we got it on its feet, and as things developed, then I would say, well, this is kind of funny. Why don't we try it in this way and see what happens? Yeah. And everything is a see what happens, not a you do this kind of thing.
Right.
And
no dictators here.
I don't know. It doesn't work for me to do that. Yeah. I didn't like it working with high school kids and having to be the dictator. I'd much rather have them come up with something that was theirs, or ours rather, than be mine. You know, I'm not a puppeteer.
That kind of people. Fantastic. Now, I'm curious, you cover a lot of different topics in this, and things that might be regarded by some as sensitive or taboo, or who knows, lascivious, scandalous. We'll throw out some fun adjectives out there. Are there consistent topics where people collectively say, oh no, she didn't, or I can't believe she's talking about that? Or does it change from audience to audience?
Well, I think two things is the idea of birth control, the frustration behind birth control, actually. Women, I mean, we seem on one level to have all these options in this world, but the truth is we really don't. We have chemicals, right, hormones. Right. We have barriers, so like if you use a condom or, you know, a diaphragm kind of thing. And then there's more of the old traditional, you know, rhythm methods and all that other stuff, right?
Like, are we dancing?
Right. Exactly. So,
careful, if he has no rhythm, you may not want to do any dancing with him.
No dancing whatsoever. Tango. So, but I think that I deal with that because there's a lot of people who can't use latex, and the hormones are horrible for women. Some women are fine with it, but some women are not. And so I think there is this frustration about I have sense, and I have frustration with it throughout my life about how to deal with that. And the diaphragm, although is probably one of the oldest and most secure, although it's not used as much today, forms of birth control, it's not a lot of fun to use. And so women often come up to me and go, oh my gosh, I tell you what, when I was given that, so there's a lot of jokes, diaphragm jokes in, so that's one theme people play off of. The other one is I think there's just really only one serious monologue in the play, and it deals with sexual abuse, and it is my mom talking about how she handled hearing that myself and my sister were both sexually abused by our uncle, and then also abused out in the real world. And it's just from her point of view of how she dealt with that information. And that brings a lot of feedback too. I will get emails from women who will say, my goodness, I needed to hear that because I need to go out and deal with this myself because it happened to me. Because statistically, 1 in every 3 to 4 girls will be sexually abused or raped, and 1 in every 5 to 7 boys will, and this will all happen before 18. So when you look at the hugeness of that number, and it is big.
It's huge.
It's huge, that we don't talk about it.
And I think also some of the resistance is the person who is on the receiving end. There's a tremendous amount of things to deal with. But then the people who are guardians, or the people who identify themselves as guardians, once they feel that maybe they have not done their job.
They have failed somehow.
Yes, exactly. They failed. And so I think it's compounded because you don't want to tell somebody because you're concerned that they're going to feel bad, and then it opens it all up, and then, you know, or there's the fear of it being blamed, like, well, you must have done something, or you should have not worn this, or I told you not to. I mean, there's so many dynamics where understanding is probably last on the list when it comes to the response. It doesn't seem to be the initial response of, what can we do to help you?
Right.
How do you feel? Are you okay? It's
Right.
always like, well, how does this make me feel, and why do I feel bad, and what did you do to bring this on to yourself? And what a terrible response to have.
And I think there are many reasons for those responses, but one of the biggest reasons, I think, is we've never been taught how to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Indeed.
And we do a lot of finger pointing. We do a lot of defensive reaction, but we don't have conversation.
It's true.
We just don't, like what's going on right here. Right here, we're just sitting down, we're talking about the issues. If you bring it up, you're at a bar or a restaurant, you know, it's like, shh, shh. There are good there are things you talk about around the dinner table, and there are things you don't. When we make those lines, and we reinforce a silence that tends to reinforce actions that cause more pain than helpful. And so, yeah, so I'm very happy that when people walk away from the show, or at least so far, that they come away with two things. First of all, laughing at the absurdity of it all, which is important to me. But also some people, and this has happened with guys as well as girls who have seen the show, they start talking about their own issues of sexual abuse and figuring out, okay, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to feel better about myself now? And if that can be accomplished, then great. That's what I'm looking for both, you know?
Absolutely. You know, so many things that you said made the synapses. That's always a sign of a fun show, because they're just firing off like crazy. To go back about the sexual abuse, I think what a lot of people also don't seem to understand is that there are elements of control and violence that color these unfortunate acts. And so when people think that because the word sexual is lumped with these acts, they think it's about desire, they think it's about eros, they think it's about attraction. And it really, even though the action is something that in certain contexts might be a loving act or a desirable act, in these contexts it's none of those things. And so I think that there's a misunderstanding of what the root is. And granted, it will be different for everything, but when we forget that there's control, or there's violence, or there's a perpetuation of abuse, a cycle of abuse, we're missing the bigger picture of what it entails. I also really appreciate that you have the laughter, but I think it's the laughter that will allow people to talk about it, because it puts the body and the spirit in a sense of comfort and ease. And how great that you're having your show, as with all the shows, on this Valentine's Day weekend. Because, you know, our other guest that we had, Lucy and her partner, forgive me, I'm so excited, my recall is not happening right now, but they have a show called Money Talks, but what the hell is it saying? And they're discussing the big no-no of money, and the relationship that people have with money, and their resistance to talk about these things. And how interesting that we live in a society that pretty much we're being bombarded constantly with things about the body and about sex and money and how those things relate. And yet we don't have the important discussions to even understand how we relate to them. And so, you know, how cool can it be? Go for a dinner, have a few cocktails, see the show, laugh, and let's talk about the body.
Talk about it.
How fun, 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 fun. Do you have a favorite part of the show? Just not to give us too many details, but it could even be one word: diaphragm.
Yeah, diaphragm.
Fallopian tubes.
When I had to, the story is more in the book and not in the show. The first time I was taken to get birth control, it was, my mom was a hippie, and so was my dad, very, very much so hippies, and they wanted to tackle the whole thing about sexuality in a very healthy and open way. So it was a family outing, I kid you not, to Planned Parenthood, and where I got my first female exam.
I hope, was that private? Was
That part, yeah, it was private. It was private. But they were all in the waiting room. My mom, my dad, my sister, and they didn't, you know, my sister benefited from this. She didn't have to have the family outing, but so because I was the oldest one, they figured with the first time around, well, that was probably a mistake. Let's not do it again. But so we went, and it was a disaster with the diaphragm. I couldn't figure out how to use it right or anything, and it got stuck. It flipped and it got stuck on the wall. And they do create suction, and it kind of fell behind a thing of drawers, and they had to come in with the broom. And I heard my dad say, "Why are they going into her room with a broom?" And then afterwards, we all went to have ice cream at Dairy Queen.
I was hoping you were going to say Dairy Queen.
That was how, but you know, I mean, I was very young. I wasn't even interested in sex or even thinking about sex, but my mom wanted me to be prepared. She didn't want me to become a statistic. My mom got pregnant when she was very, very young. She was barely 16, and I think for her, she wanted to make sure that I had my tools that she didn't have.
Which is interesting, because a lot of times there's a pattern where when there's a young mom, the young daughter then also gets pregnant young as well.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah. And she wanted to make sure that I had the tools. But that day was just weird.
Yeah.
For me, so
I don't think anything is going to diminish the weirdness. No amount of time.
There was just I kind of re-envisioned how that day was in my head as a young girl, and that scene is in the play, and so it's a little absurd, but it's kind of funny. I'm not going to give it away,
okay,
because it's just too much fun. But that's probably my favorite scene in the play is that one there. It's just the oddity. And I also give a wonderful lecture on comparing the diaphragm to a taco from Taco Bell, which is awfully funny too.
Does that mean it gives you the runs?
No.
Are we back to that?
No. Similarity in shape. How you fill them.
You won't be running for the border or anything.
No running for the border. No,
you won't hear a bell when you're going to get it on.
Ding! Although that might be helpful, because that might let you know when you got it right. So, you know, a little sound effect here and there.
It could be helpful.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's a lot for people to learn and to laugh about at your show. So I just want to, I'm going to read this to you guys. Ooh, it's in the small font here. I'm getting to that age as well. February 12th and 14th at 6 p.m. and February 13th at 7:30 p.m. And this is at On King. And $10, hey, what's not to like? Cheaper than seeing a movie.
Yeah.
You get to support the arts and do something educational. And for those of you who haven't been to On King, my goodness, what are you waiting for? A written invitation? Consider this, that. And, you know, I am performing that night as well, not at Fringe, but I'm really hoping that I can make one of your shows.
Oh, I hope you can.
It sounds like a fantastic show, and I appreciate that you could make time out of a busy schedule to come in and share with us what all this delightful madness is about. Singing and also writing the diaphragm. Your book, available for purchase online. Can people go and check it out?
Yes, on Amazon.com, but I'll also have them at the show.
And maybe get a signed copy?
Signed copy, huge discount, you know, a discounted price for the book too. There, so yeah.
Fantastic. Dale, Rebecca, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For sharing something so personal, and for having the drive to see it through, to share it in many different capacities, the spoken word, the show, as a director, as writing the book. It's a wonderful thing. It's a legacy I'm sure that neither of you will ever feel any doubts about. So we're looking forward to it. This is The Art of Life, where we're keeping it Pono, and we will see you next Friday. Aloha.